Hey everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Rube, we have something fun today.
I think this will be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's our chance to really kind of get ready for training camp, and we have our top 25 most important Eagles heading into the season. We're going to go look through half of the list today, then the other half of the list next week, and we're going to count down.
No, Dave. If there's 25, unless we're stopping in the middle of the 13th guy, we can't do half. We're going to do 52% of the list today, 48% in our next podcast. I really strive for accuracy here on Eagle Eye Podcast.
Roughly half of the list today,
Very
roughly
good.
half of the list next week.
Much better.
And we'll just kind of go through these. All the written pieces are already starting to come out, and we're just going to run them down here. So 25, at number 25, the third-year wide receiver out of Southern Mississippi, Quez Watkins.
Yeah, really interesting player. 6-round picks as wide receivers rarely make an impact, and he made an impact. I know a lot of fans are down on Quez. Look, we all saw some routes that he gave up on, some plays that he just didn't finish, some routes. He's a really raw player, and I just think he offers you enough as a playmaker with that speed. He's got pretty good hands, and I think he showed a little flair for playing in the slot. He catches the ball well. I think he uses his speed well. He's more than just a guy you run on a few go routes. I like Quez. I'm really curious to see where he's going to fit in with the new additions at wide receiver. But I think he's a weapon, and I think he's going to make a difference.
Yeah, just 24 too. I mean, he's a young player. He's already. I mean, if he had never played another snap, he'd already be a good 6th-round pick.
Yeah, and when you draft a guy that late, there's a reason for it, and he comes from a small program and just not a polished player. There's that word polished. But I think he's going to be. Look, because of the additions they made at wide receiver, I don't even know if he'll have as many yards as he had. 647 last year, I think.
Yeah. 43 for 647 and a touchdown.
Yeah, but I think he'll play a role.
Yeah, I do too. And I think having a guy like A.J. Brown who can play inside and probably will, I like the idea of getting Quez on the outside on occasion.
Yeah.
All right. Number 24, Gardner Minshew. And this is, I always do this. I like to put the backup quarterback on the list if this is a year where there's high expectations. And yeah, there are high expectations for the Eagles this year. They needed Gardner Minshew to win a game for them last year. It's very possible that happens again in 2022.
Yeah, and he played great up at the Meadowlands in that game. I think your backup quarterback these days is such an important position. It's so rare that your star plays all year. And a win here or win there. I mean, if Gardner Minshew doesn't win that game, they're not in the playoffs last year. So that's how important it is. And it was Andy Reid who first kind of taught me the importance of that position. He's like, your backup quarterback is as important as anybody on the team. And not just for when he plays, but, just having that veteran guy who can – and Gardner's not that much older than Jalen Hurts, but he started a lot of games. So yeah, he really is an important guy. The odds are he's gonna play. I mean, who was the last Eagles quarterback to play every snap or every meaningful snap from start to finish?
2016.
Yeah, 2016. The guy whose name is similar to Carson Strong. But it's rare. Before that, it was probably 5 in. He got benched in 2008, so that wasn't an injury, but probably 5 in 2003. No, it's rare. And Jaws, Randall, and Donovan are the only other guys who've done it, other than the guy in Indy in 16 as a rookie.
He's not the guy in Indy anymore.
He'll always be the guy in Indy to me.
Carson Wentz.
Just can't do it. I'm not ready yet. I'm not emotionally there.
All right, 23.
Yeah.
TJ Edwards, who, I mean, I don't think it's hyperbolic at all to say he saved their defense last year.
Isn't that one of those chambers, hyperbolic chambers?
That's hyperbaric.
Oh, okay. My bad. I thought you were saying he's like, no, never mind. Yeah, I think he's a really underrated player. And I think I wrote in my obs last week that even with the additions that they made at off-ball linebacker, He's still going to play. He'll still have a role. It won't be as big as last year, but you're right. That defense really changed his personality when he started playing. He's a really tough guy. He's a good run defender. He can do some other things, and I think he's gotten a little bit better every year, like undrafted guys tend to do. They just keep getting better because they have so much room to grow, I guess, as players. I like TJ. I think he'll have a role, and it won't be a huge one, but he is pretty important.
It's amazing to me how much his role changed from the first half of last year to the second half. And I looked it up. Through the first 8 games of the season, he had played around 37% of their defensive snaps. In the next 8 games, because he didn't play in that,
it was like 95%, right?
It was 94.9% of their defensive snaps. I strive for accuracy here.
I said like 95%, so I was correct.
Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, that's a ton. He's not going to do that again. If he does, something went wrong, honestly.
Right.
But he can play a role. And I know that he gives up something in the pass game. He's not great.
He's gotten better.
And he's serviceable. It's not like he's a total liability out there when teams are passing. And he's a thumper. I mean, he really is. He's a tough, physical inside linebacker.
He's a thumper, Dave.
I knew I was getting that. All right. Your favorite impression of all time.
My only one.
And
I do coat tight, and that's it.
Number 22. And this one might be a surprise to some people. Marcus Epps. To me, their best safety in a tandem that includes Anthony Harris, who's the more veteran player, but Epps was a better player than both Harris and Rodney McLeod for most of last year. But now it's the big question is, can that translate into a full-time role?
Yeah, and I think generally the guys that can't make that jump from playing 40% or 45% of the snaps to playing close to 100% is if they don't run real well, if they're not physical, or if there's something about their game, their size. But I think Epps, he has a good chance of being able to handle it because I think he has all those things. I think he's pretty solid. I don't think he played bad last year, and I don't see any reason he can't have an increased role. And look, the best football the Eagles defense played last year might have had something to do with the quarterbacks they were facing, but it was when they rotated 3 safeties and Epps was working his way in there. Yeah, I kind of like his game.
Yeah, I do too. And I get it, but you never know until the guy's out there full time if he can handle that responsibility.
No, you just don't.
Yeah. All right. Next one on the list, number 21, the starting left guard. He's not moving from that spot. Landon Dickerson.
Yeah, it is a really important guy because, I mean, look, he was playing really well at the end of the year, but he's still a young guy who hasn't played a full season as a starter, and I think he's a known quantity now. People have tape on him. I'm pretty bullish on him. I think he's going to be really good. But they certainly need him to kind of pick up where he left off last year. But I thought by the end of last year, he was pretty much playing at a Pro Bowl level. So if he can pick up from there, that's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, I look back at how he played last year, and I feel silly for questioning his early season struggles because he missed all of camp and he's coming off this serious injury. But I got to admit, when I saw him out there for the first few games, I went, uh-oh, he doesn't look good at all. But gosh, he got so much better as the year went on.
Yeah, and it's a guy who, he didn't really have a full off season at all. He had been hurt for so long, just, so many injuries. He started off at right guard. He moved to left guard. It's a lot for a young kid. And, but there's something just clicked. I mean, and once it did, it was like, wow, this guy could play.
Yeah. It'll take us a while to get to Jordan Mailata on this list, but having him and Landon Dickerson on that left side of the line, everyone understands why they're keeping them together. You have 698 pounds.
Thank you.
On that left side of the line. It's scary. I mean, imagine being a defense looking at that.
Pro Bowler this year, Landon?
Probably not. Typically, especially interior offensive linemen, the recognition comes late. So even if he has a great year, he's probably a year removed from that nod.
Being a higher draft pick, I think, helps him. And if the team has success, that'll help him. I think he's got a shot.
Problem is, how many Pro Bowlers are they going to have on that offensive line?
6. All the starters plus Driscoll.
All right. Number 20, Jake Elliott, who, this time last year, we are talking about, man, they're stuck with this guy. They can't do anything. And now he's coming off by far his best season in the NFL.
Yeah, well, his first year was pretty good.
By far better last year.
Yeah, he was really good last year. And yeah, there were so many questions about him. Remember in 2020, he missed a 22 and a 29, I think.
Yeah.
And he was just barely over 70%, which nobody kicks like that. And he admitted, I remember he admitted he had confidence issues. And then he tried to, I think I asked him that and I followed up on it. He's like, well, no, not really. But he did allow that. He struggled with his confidence at points, but man, he was money last year. He was big.
He went from 73% to over 90%.
Yeah.
It's and look, and
kickers will do that though. It's a nonlinear progression.
It is, but it kind of goes. The reason I have him on this list is kind of the same reason as Gardner Minshew. When you have a team with high expectations and you're talking about a playoff team, little things can matter. And the backup quarterback, if he has to play a game, and the kicker. I mean, how many games are they going to be in this year where it might come down to a kick?
Yeah, you know what I like about Jake Elliott is, look, he made 2 big-time kicks in the fourth quarter of a Super Bowl. Well, I think it was, God, I'm going to get this wrong and you're going to rip me. Was it 46 and 48, something like that? Which no rookie had ever made one kick that long in a Super Bowl. So he's got that thing that kickers need. That inner belief that he can make any kick at any time. And you have to have that. Without it, you're just going to be a mess. I don't know, maybe he didn't have it 2 years ago, but I have a lot more faith in him now, certainly, than I did a year ago.
Yeah. In the back of your mind, I think until he does it 2 years consistently, until he plays that well for 2 years in a row, you're going to be thinking, well, is he going to revert to being the version of him we saw in 2020? But it's hard to argue with what we saw last year. Over 90%, 3 for 3 from 50, made all of his extra points. I mean, he was really good.
42 and 46 in the Super Bowl.
There you go.
And that 46-yarder, I mean, that was a huge kick. That was with 1:05 left, and it made it 41-33. It made it an 8-point game. All
right, next one, number 19 on the list. This one was a tough one to place. Brandon Graham. You could have had him higher based on how much we know he means to the team, but you have to also temper expectations a little bit for a 34-year-old guy coming off an Achilles injury.
Yeah, that's so true. And we don't really know what version of BG we're going to get, and they kind of need him. So it's kind of an important deal. Like he's 34, he's coming off a really serious injury, so it's hard to say, he's going to get 10 sacks, or that would be a career high for him. But he's BG, so you never really count him out. Anything's possible.
Yeah, because you look at the other defensive ends, just the pure defensive ends, because Hassan Reddick is kind of that Sam linebacker. Right? They have BG, Sweat, and Derek Barnett.
I thought you were going to use that overhang word. I like when you use that. Yeah, it is. And you don't want to rely that much on, on a guy who's 34 coming off a big time injury, but they're in that position.
Yeah. It is fascinating though, because he's so positive all the time that sometimes it's just a little tough to tell.
Right.
What exactly.
Well, it was certainly encouraging that he was out there for OTAs and full participant. So we'll see. I mean, if you ask him, he'll probably say, I'm going to have 40 sacks this year. Dave, what's the record? 22 and a half. Oh, I should get 30.
Yeah.
I should get 30 at least.
That's what we love about him, though.
Yeah. Among other things.
Yeah. All right. Number 18, Jordan Davis. Kind of another tough one to place because we don't really know exactly what his role is going to be, but number 13 overall pick is going to play a lot.
Yeah, it's true. We don't know how much playing time he'll get, but he's really important because the better he does, the more he's going to play, and the better he acclimates, and the better shape he gets into, and the more versatile he shows he can be as far as playing. Can he play on a 3rd and 6 and make an impact? If he can, that's going to be huge for them. So, yeah, I think he's about in the right place. He's number 18. He's not a starter per se, but certainly he's one of those guys that there's such a wide range of possibilities with him, as far as how much of an impact he can make and how much he can play. So I think it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think but I do think we know the baseline. The baseline is going to be he's a rotational guy who's a great run stuffer.
Right.
Baseline. That's the absolute floor. That's what he's going to be, a exceptional run defender. Everything else is projection, but I feel pretty confident that he's going to be a pretty big part of what they do defensively. And I think his presence kind of unlocks, and it's another part of being an important player. I won't use that word. His presence unlocks a lot of what they can do schematically too,
True.
because he's really the only prototypical nose tackle they have on this roster. Well, aside from Noah Ellis, who's an undrafted rookie.
You love Noah Ellis.
I do.
Yeah.
All right. Number 17, Kaiser White.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we kind of forget about Kaiser White because they've added Hassan Reddick and Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis and James Bradbury on the defensive side of the ball. But Kaiser White on a 1-year deal figures to play a pretty prominent role in this defense.
I think there's a tendency when a guy signs a 1-year deal to kind of think of him as a stopgap or, just kind of he's just passing through. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty valuable guy just because we don't know. I mean, we have high expectations for Nakobe. We don't know. We don't know where he'll be or what he's going to give this team. So I'm not sure I'd have Kaiser as high as you do, but somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I mean, and once we get through the 13th player, we'll kind of look back at the order a little bit. I think Kaiser can play.
Yeah.
I do, and we've seen the linebackers here in recent years, the veteran guys who have struggled, but I don't get that sense from him. And look, maybe I didn't with those guys at the time either. That's certainly fair, but I think he played at a higher level last year than any of those other guys did the year before they came here.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I haven't really seen a whole lot of them. I read what people said about him, and I mean, the fans there were certainly unhappy to lose. And that's how you can usually tell, because coaches will say, I hate to lose him, but if the fans, are disappointed the guy's leaving, then because they're going to have credibility either way. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that whole off-ball linebacker rotation looks and how that position looks. I do have a feeling Kaiser is going to be in the middle of everything.
Yeah, I do too. I think he's going to be the starting weak side linebacker, and we'll see what that means for the other two. But I think he's going to play a lot. And the thing to remember here is that Brandon Staley was his coach last year, and Jonathan Gannon and Brandon Staley go way back. So if there's ever someone to kind of lay out a plan for how to use a player, you'd imagine Staley did that for Gannon.
Yeah, that's probably true. Although knowing Gannon, he might just have a completely different idea of how to use him. But he's played a lot of football, and I like the fact that he's just gotten better every year. And by last year, I mean, people out there thought he was Pro Bowl caliber player. So he's not just this is not Eric Wilson. This is a guy who can play.
Yeah. All right, number 16, Avante Maddox, who he was in the wrong position 2 years ago. He just was. He wasn't an outside corner. They moved him into the nickel, and all of a sudden, he's a really good player.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think he's one of the better slots in the league, and slot these days is it's a starting position, really. Even if you're not always on the field on the first snap, you're playing so much, and it's such an important position because there's really good slot receivers, and Avante has shown he can handle that. Um, NFL is such a passing league anymore that I think your slot's always going to be a top 15 to 20 most important guy, even if he's not technically a starter. And he'll start 8 to 10 games just because teams are going to play three wides on the first snap of the game. I mean, that's how you decide who's a starter, who's ever out there for the first snap, and that'll be him a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. It's funny because our recognition of nickel cornerbacks has not caught up with the reality. Just an
True.
overall trend thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get paid as much as the outside cornerbacks. People think less of them because they're not out there for every snap, but they're so important. And you can argue that the job's tougher.
It's a very specific skill set. You don't have the sideline to help you out. You really have to have, I mean, you have to be tough physically because slot receivers are generally strong, inside because, you're looking at receivers that don't have the best speed. They'd be outside if they did. So they're generally tough, strong, big, tough to tackle, good in space. It's a very specific skill set.
And you end up helping out in the run game quite a bit too, just
Yeah.
because of your proximity to where those plays happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and Avante's good at all those things.
Very good. He for being a guy who's 5'9", he's pretty tough.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that scares me is his size and how long he can hold up. But because he's so physical and he likes to stick his nose in there on the running plays. So you worry about it.
Yeah, I don't worry about it as much there. The only time his size really affected him was when he was asked to play outside corner, and he was going up against guys who were significantly taller than him. But
yeah, but I'm not talking about. I just worry about him taking such a beating at that size. Now he didn't do it last year, but I mean he's so tough and he's so eager to support the run and tackle guys. He's got great form as a tackler. Yeah, it's a concern, but he's certainly hasn't been a problem.
Yeah. Number 15 on the list. Now, this is one that's definitely a projection. Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, if he's going to play, I think we both are in agreement that he's going to end up playing the most snaps at linebacker, period. If that's the case, then this is the right place for him because you're talking about a guy who's going to be out there as a rookie third-round pick who's going to be out there 60 to 70 snaps a game.
Yeah.
It's huge. And he's going to have to support the run. He's going to have to be solid in coverage. And he's going to have to get some pressure on the quarterback. I mean, they're going to want him to do everything. And he's a versatile player. He can play, he can play middle. He can play weak side. So I think he's going to play a lot of different positions. I think he's going to have a lot of different roles. I think he's going to be asked to do a lot of different things. So when you have a young guy who is in that position, that's asking a lot. Yeah. And that makes him, puts him in the top 15.
It's really ambitious to think about. All right, here's this rookie third-round pick. And the third round doesn't really even factor into any of this because he was a higher round talent, right? But you have this young player and you're going to say, all right, you have to play the Mike position. You have to play the will position. I agree with you. They're going to ask him to play the run, play the pass. They're going to ask him to blitz on occasion because that's what he did in college and he did it really well. On top of all that, I think there's a very good chance they're going to ask him to have that green dot on his helmet, which is like, that'll tell you how much Jonathan Gannon thinks of him. If Jonathan Gannon gives this kid the green dot, we'll know he's a special player, or at least a special player in the meeting room.
Yeah. And again, the green dot, do you want to explain what the green dot means?
Sure. Green dot just has the equipment to receive the calls from the sidelines. So basically the coaches relay it to one player in the huddle. On offense, that's the quarterback. And on defense, it becomes the quarterback of the defense. And typically it's the middle linebacker.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the linebacker that's on the field the most almost every time. It's got to be somebody who's smart and can communicate well, has a strong voice, so yeah, that'll tell you if he's got that helmet, that's going to tell you a lot.
All right, number 14, Fletcher Cox. And I struggled to figure out where to put him. When we did this exercise last year, I had him number 2.
How about that?
So this is a pretty steep drop. He's still a really important player for this defense.
Do you know this is 3 consecutive podcasts you've used the word exercise? Use that word a lot. I think
Is that a criticism?
No, not at all. It's just interesting. Interesting word. It's indicative of, you look at things as an exercise, and no, it's not. It's probably closer to praise.
I'll take that. I'll take close to praise.
But it's interesting to me. It's not a word. I don't think it's a word. I have to incorporate it into my daily vocab as an exercise. I'm going to work on that. But Fletcher's another one of those guys who I think because he's declined, and I think it's pretty clear each year for the last few years, and that could continue. I don't know what to expect from him. $14 million, he better be decent at least. But if he continues that kind of down, it's been a gradual downward thing.
It was a little steeper last year.
A little steeper. He's got to turn that around. He doesn't have to be all pro Fletcher anymore, Pro Bowl Fletcher anymore, but he's got to be solid.
Yeah. And like the 14 million at this point, they did it, we're not really talking about the money anymore. It's about him being on this team and probably still being a starter and playing significant snaps. He needs to play pretty well. He just does. And it might help him if, Javon Hargrave had a pretty good year last year, so he's going to start taking more of the double teams. And Jordan Davis, just by being a 335 to 40 pound nose tackle, he's going to get doubled too. So I think that'll help him if he starts getting some more one-on-ones.
Yeah, he was struggling against one-on-ones last year a lot of times. So I'm very curious to see what he's got left.
What's your gut tell you?
I don't have a great feeling about him, honestly. I really don't. Because once you see a guy start to decline, it's really rare. He's not that old. Was he 30? 31? 31. It's just, you just don't expect him to kind of turn it around. Now, in his second year in this defense, maybe he will. We'll find out. But and I'm not knocking him. It's just my gut instinct is that downward trend is going to continue.
Yeah, it's possible. And I've mentioned this before, but I do think it's true. He's kind of a little bit of a victim of his own success in some ways.
I think so.
He played so well. Like, I didn't think he was bad last year.
I think he was bad.
I still thought he was a good player.
I think there were plays he got blown up that you're not used to seeing.
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's still an above average player. Is he a top 10 defensive tackle like his salary says he is? Probably not. He's certainly not last year.
Well, let's say there's 32 teams, say there's 64 starting defensive tackles. Now some teams play 3-4, but let's say, like, where would you rank them?
Top half.
Not much higher for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you're undervaluing a little bit just based on the drop.
Maybe I am.
Like, if you were to just see this player and you didn't know who he was, that's a pretty good player. I think the expectations for him were obviously much higher because he was a 6-time Pro Bowler and he's been an excellent player here for so long that I think it's tough to separate that.
Could be. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean he's going to live up to 14 mil a year either, because he can really make a strong case that they shouldn't have paid him that money and used it elsewhere, but they did it and now he's here. So
yeah.
Number 13, and this is where we will stop for today. Newcomer, James Bradbury, CB2.
Yeah, this is such an important move. They needed him so bad, and I think the fact that for the first time in his career, he's not going to be CB1. He's not going to be lining up against the best guys on the other team. It's a real advantage for him. I feel so good about Slay. You have to feel pretty good about Bradbury as the CB2.
Yeah, and having those two, that position matters. In a way, it matters even more when you have a clear top corner, because this will help them. At times, they won't have to, depending on who they're facing and what the caliber receiver talent they're seeing, they might not have to travel Slay as much. He likes doing it, but if you're looking and you say, well, the difference between these receivers isn't great enough, you can stay on your sides, and it makes it a little easier from a communication standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. He's the fourth new Eagle in this group today. So you're looking at Jordan Davis, Kaiser White, Nakobe Dean, and Bradbury. So the first half of this list, 4 new guys, which is interesting.
Let's run through, and this is where we're stopping today, but let's run through the list again, recap it real quick. 25, Quez Watkins. 24, Gardner Minshew. 23, TJ Edwards. 22, Marcus Epps. 21, Landon Dickerson. 20, Jake Elliott. 19, Brandon Graham. 18, Jordan Davis. 17, Kaiser White. 16, Avante Maddox. 15, Nakobe Dean. 14, Fletcher Cox. 13, James Bradbury.
You know what I just noticed? There's all defense from 19 to 13.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And 9 out of the first 13 are defensive players, and 1 is a specialist. So you only had 3 offensive players on there, and 2 of them were the first 2 guys, Quez and Gardner at 25 and 24, and the other one is Dickerson, which is interesting. I think that is reflective of the fact that this is kind of a new defense with a lot of question marks, and we'll see in the top half of this. But the one guy, and when I look at this, and I think we talked about this, I think Kenny Gainwell should be on this list somewhere. And I think he's going to have a pretty significant role. I might put him on here instead of TJ Edwards, who I think, I just think he'll have more of an impact. I think TJ is going to play. But based on what I saw last year from Gainwell, and especially with Miles' injury history, Gainwell's ability to catch the ball, his ability to get in the end zone, I think he's going to have an expanded role. And I would put him somewhere in my top 25. That's my only qualm with
Yeah,
this
and he
list.
was a guy who was on my mind too.
It would have been 26 if he did 26.
It would have been Gainwell. He was one I wanted to try to figure out a way to get on the list. But I really want to Minshew on here. I feel like the backup quarterback is important. And like the kind of outside the box ones. And I really wanted Elliott on here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would have taken TJ off probably, but that's just me.
Anyone else who you think's too high, too low? I think, like looking back at this, Brandon Graham might be too low.
Could be.
It was tough to know where to place him.
Yeah. No, I think they're all pretty much within a spot or two of where I would have put them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Next week, we'll go from 12 to 1 and find out the most important player for the 2022 Eagles. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. We'll talk to you next time.